My name is Sherry Rush. I am a paralegal and certified senior advisor, and my area of expertise has been in long-term care Medicaid planning for 23 years, and I 10 years ago founded Angels of Elder Care Planning, which is now the Angels of Elder Planning under the HWK Law Group. There we go again. Okay. So just a little bit about myself. I started in the elder law arena back in 1998, just kind of trying to get my feet wet, trying to figure out what kind of career I wanted to be in, and took the position and absolutely fell in love with it. It gives you an opportunity to help so many families and walk them through a process that is so emotionally overwhelming. And so for the last 23 years, as I mentioned, my goal is to assist our clients, give them an amazing positive outcome at the end of the Medicaid process. And through that process, what makes me different is I'm very compassionate. I'm very hands-on. Most of my clients become, like family to me. So I really take it to heart to make sure that these people receive the services that they need and they get a great outcome so that they can actually sleep at night. I apologize.
Do you want me to do it, Sherry?
Yes, I'm having difficulty. I apologize. So our discussion today is going to be specifically for the Maryland Medicaid long-term care medical assistance benefits. And as Deborah had mentioned previously, the cost of being in a nursing home can average between $10,000 to $16,000 a month. And I do see that increasing pretty much by a month-to-month basis. It really is increasing faster than it used to. I think some of that could be the owners of the companies, also the care that they need. So we need to make sure that everyone is aware of the Medicaid benefits that are out there so that the elderly and their entire family do not lose all of the assets that they worked so hard to achieve. So what we do in the long-term care Medicaid planning process is we meet with our clients and we like to gather a lot of important information. There's a lot of family dynamics that are involved. And what we do is gather this information. We want to give them a strategy. How are they able to protect or shelter assets within the 5-year look-back period that Maryland Medicaid has at this time? How are we able to protect and shelter assets for a spouse that may still be living at home in the community and may be doing so for quite some time? And also, if you have a spouse or maybe a disabled child, how are we going to protect the home? Maybe they have some vacation property that they want to be able to maintain. So we're able to sit down and strategize and provide this information to the families. So I want to begin just kind of to piggyback on the Medicare piece that Deborah mentioned previously, that it does not cover very much when it comes to assisted living in nursing homes, and just give you some brief information on that and how it plays into the Medicaid long-term care process. So first, as we all know, Medicare is a federal program. It is a type of medical insurance that typically when you reach the age of 65, you're eligible to receive these benefits. There are certain circumstances that if you are under the age of 65, that you could qualify for the Medicare benefit, which is usually for someone who's been disabled for more than 2 years, and if they have end-stage renal disease. There are 4 components or parts of the Medicare program, and the first is the Medicare A, which is your hospital insurance, which is strictly just that. You have your Medicare Part B, which is your medical insurance, your doctor's visits and things like that. I'm going to skip over C and go to Medicare Part D, which is your prescription drug coverage, which most people, as Deborah mentioned, are kind of in their enrollment period for a lot of these things at this time. And Part C is really a combination of having A, B, and D all under one roof, kind of similar what I compare it to as an HMO type of insurance. it kind of wraps it all up into one. So what I also want to preface on the Medicare side of things, where it falls into with long-term care Medicaid eligibility, is most people are under the assumption that when you go into the hospital, you have some type of situation, you're there for 3 days, you go out to the nursing home for rehabilitation, that you're going to automatically have Medicare cover your entire stay, which is totally incorrect. So I want to make sure that I elaborate on that for you a little later in the presentation. So as I mentioned, with Medicare being federal, it is also, it works in tandem with Medicaid. Again, after the rehabilitation and Medicare covers, then we have the Medicaid side of it. And when I started, I mentioned that I'm going to speak specifically for Maryland Medicaid because each state has different rules and requirements. Most of the states are somewhat similar, but there are differences, which is why we try to specialize in one particular state. Maryland here has a 5-year look back period. So when you go to apply for Medicaid, they are going to require basically all of your financial history for the last 60 months retroactively from when you apply. And the reason most people need these Medicaid benefits is because the cost of the nursing home is so expensive. So if they do not have the amount of income to pay per month for the long-term care and they're depleting assets, we need to make sure that we have a way for these people to receive care and the facility to still get paid. So each individual that applies for the Medicaid program, there is a financial component and also a medical component. And that medical component is just as Deborah Bakalich spoke about earlier. They look at your activities of daily living, how much assistance you need with those activities. So the financial piece of it is what I'll be explaining in the next couple of slides. And if you are approved for these Medicaid benefits, specifically as I'm talking about today, it does cover long-term care. There is a medical assistance program that would cover adult daycare, some assisted living situations, and some medical needs in the community. But again, as Deborah stated in the previous presentation on her slides, this is very, very difficult to qualify for or actually get approval for at this point in time. So I'd like to start off, as I said, Medicaid having financial components or requirements, to go through the list of some of the assets or things that, that are not counted. So if you are going into the nursing home and you are trying to qualify for Medicaid benefits, the first thing that I want everyone to know is that the state is not going to take your house. They're not going to take everything that you have. They're not going to kick your spouse out. So it's important to know that if you have a principal place of residence and you're going into the nursing home for a period of time and you intend to return home, or you have a spouse living in that house, or you have a disabled child, your house is not going to be counted as an asset against you when you're applying for Medicaid benefits. Also, many, many years ago, I want to say around 2006 or so, the state of Maryland is no longer counting the value of your regular automobile or vehicle. So this does not include, your boats, your recreational vehicles, ATVs, things like that. But your regular automobile is not considered an asset when you're applying for Medicaid. Also, anything, the contents in your house, your place of residence is also not counted as an asset. With the exception if there are certain umbrella policies on your homeowner's insurance where you're covering, certain coin collections, stamp collections, things like that of great value, we do need to include those as assets. We also do not count any term or group life insurance. So term insurance meaning there's a beneficiary on it, you have no cash value buildup, the insurance policy would just pay out to your beneficiary when you pass away. They don't carry any cash value, so they are not considered an asset. They are exempt. Your other life insurance policies, your whole life insurance, okay, which basically accumulates dividends and it has a cash value and you can obtain or get that cash value out of the policy while you're still alive. If the policies combined, if there's more than one, if the face value of those policies is $1,500 or less, we can exempt those policies as an asset for Medicaid. If the face value of these policies is more than $1,500, the cash value of those policies is considered an asset to your Medicaid application. Also, any prepaid funeral arrangements that are irrevocable, your cemetery plots, burial spaces, those are exempt as well. And any other assets that have already been protected prior to the application that are not within our look back period, they are also not counted and exempt as well. So some of the other things, so if we go through the assets that are not counted or exempt, the assets that are counted to determine financial eligibility would be things, as I mentioned, if you have an umbrella policy on your homeowner's insurance, your coin collections, stamp collections, your recreational vehicles, as I mentioned. You have mutual funds, IRAs, 401ks, any type of retirement accounts. The life insurance policies that are whole life that are face value, $1,500 or more in value. Property or vacation houses. You have maybe a parcel of land in a different state that you've been looking to build on that's just sitting there. The value of that property is also considered as an asset. Old savings bonds, most people forget that they have them. Stocks, bank accounts, checking, savings, CDs. And we look at all of these assets that are counted because in order for the applicant to be considered eligible for Medicaid, their assets cannot exceed $2,500 on the first day of the month that they are applying for Medicaid benefits. And I put a little note here on the screen. So if we are doing a different strategy where we're trying to protect assets, the asset limit is $2,000 as opposed to the $2,500. There is a big difference there, but I just wanted to point that out. When you're determining eligibility for someone who's single, as I mentioned, the assets cannot exceed $2,500 on the first of the month. When you're married, there is basically a three-step process that needs to be calculated to look at the amount of assets that your spouse at home can actually retain at the time that you need Medicaid benefits. So the first important date that is we like to look at is called, I call the snapshot date. It's taking a full assessment of all of the assets between the couple, between husband and wife, regardless of how it's titled. It may just be in the wife's name, it may just be in the husband's name, or jointly titled. Anything of value, we need to look at those total assets as of the first day of the month that the ill spouse goes into the nursing home. So if they enter September 15th, we need to value assets as of September 1st. Everything with Medicaid is going to revert to the first of the month. It's really important to have an accurate total of that snapshot date because that will determine the second step is how much the spouse can keep at the time of application. Most people get confused that there is a maximum amount of assets that Maryland allows the community spouse to retain, which right now in 2021 is approximately $130,000. So that if you're under that and you're married, you automatically qualify. There's also a minimum amount, which is approximately $26,000 between husband and wife. And I can say that if your financial assets are below that between the two of you, you do financially qualify. But if you fall in between the minimum and the maximum, that is where things get a little tricky. So you need to look at the snapshot date to determine if your spouse at home can keep up to the maximum. If the total assets between husband and wife on the snapshot date do not exceed $260,000 plus, then your spouse in the community will not get to keep the maximum. So that snapshot date is very key. If you apply and you think that you get to keep the maximum and there's a lag of time for the application to be processed and the state of Maryland comes back and says you're not eligible, you're now incurring a very expensive bill at the nursing home. So it's very important to make sure your snapshot date is correct down to the penny. The third step of the process is what we call the post-eligibility period. So once the application is submitted, we have our eligibility. We want to make sure that the spouse at home has things titled solely in their name. We just want to make sure that, you know, they have everything in their name. So if by chance that they would predecease the person in the nursing home, we want to make sure that things are going to be followed through according to their will and not bounced back to the person in the nursing home, of which we tried to protect assets for. So this here on the next slide is a copy of our medical assistance checklist. So when we meet with clients, as I mentioned, because the state of Maryland has a 5-year look back period, this gives you an overall look of what the state would need in order to process a Medicaid application. It is very overwhelming, but they basically need to know everything about you from the, you know, when you were born, are you married? If you're divorced, when were you divorced? Do you own a house? Do you have deposits sitting out somewhere where you're entitled to get money back? And then, of course, most importantly, your 5 years worth of bank statements so that they can look at your financial history to see if you've given away assets in the last 5 years. And where that really gets sticky, you know, the state wants to make sure if you're giving money away, where did it go? They can assess a penalty for doing that, which is why it's really important to have someone in the elder law field take a look at your financial history to make sure that there's no hiccups along the way, so that when the application is submitted, you're pretty assured that things are going to be okay and you've dotted your I's and crossed your T's. And here on this next slide is just a sample copy of what the Medicaid application on paper actually looks like. It's about 17 pages long. Again, just like the checklist, it can be a little overwhelming, but that's why it's very helpful to make sure you have someone who's familiar with the process to help you fill this out. Prior to January of 2021, we were able to fill this application out and, you know, hand deliver it or email it to the state of Maryland. Now they have their own kind of portal where you need to go and input all of this information. So it's very unfamiliar territory for the public, and those of us that have experience with it, that we are able to do that and make the process that much faster. So as I think Deborah said earlier in her presentation, is it's definitely better to plan ahead. We run into a lot of clients that, as we call, they're in crisis. So they're crisis planning, and there's always an opportunity to still do something. But if you pre-plan, what we call our pre-crisis planning, you benefit more. You can do this when you're less stressed. You can do this when it's not a financial burden on you and you're accumulating this nursing home bill of $10,000 to $16,000 a month. So the one thing that I want to to get out there and educate the public is you're never too young, and you really need to plan before you need it. And the earlier you do it, the less effect it would have on your family members later on down the road. So I also wanted to just talk briefly, a lot of what brings this whole Medicaid strategy and application process to fruition is sometimes the person in the nursing home that needs the benefits may not be capable of going through this process, whether it be physically or mentally. So there are certain documents or estate planning tools that really need to be in place. And again, the earlier the better, that really need to be in place in order to make all of this happen. And I'd like to just talk briefly about the durable power of attorney in the Advanced Healthcare Directive. So the durable power of attorney, as most people are aware, this is a document that where you, while you are competent to do so, puts in writing the name of the person that in the event you were unable to handle things financially for yourself, who is that trusted agent that you want to take over. A lot of people get a little nervous as the power of attorney agent that, you know, they may be financially responsible for this person. And they're not. It's really, you just have a fiduciary duty to deal with this person that you're helping with their assets. And this document is so key So the power of attorney, when it's signed, it's effective upon its execution. And you do this while you are well, so that in the event when you become disabled, the person you named as your agent can go out and do things for you financially. And when you become disabled or you're in the hospital, something's going on, it doesn't affect this document. It just allows that specific person who was appointed to step in and do these things as if you were able. We want to make sure that that's in place, because if you are in a nursing home getting rehab and you can't come home, whether it be physical or cognitive, and no one else is on your bank accounts or able to do anything, we're unable to gather documentation for the Medicaid application. And that gets really sticky, because the alternative would just be a guardianship, which is definitely more time consuming and more expensive. So if you want to take a look at what a power of attorney document looks like, the state of Maryland does currently have what they call the statutory power of attorney on the Office of Attorney General's website. But I do want to preface that your power of attorney be reviewed by an attorney, because the statutory has certain, it allows you to do certain things for this person, but it doesn't contain certain provisions that are needed to do Medicaid planning. So it's very important to have it reviewed, if you can, by an attorney before it's executed. The other document that's very important along with Medicaid planning is the Advance Directive for Healthcare, or as it was formerly known, the Living Will, or Healthcare Power of Attorney. Just like the power of attorney, this is more, it's all medical. So it just points out what kind of treatment you want in the event you are unable to make these decisions for yourself. So even though the document is effective upon execution, you name someone that you trust that knows all your healthcare wishes, what you would want if you are unable to, for example, take food and water by mouth. Do you want to take this intravenously? Do you want to be on a ventilator if you need assistance breathing? Do you want pain medication, even if it would shorten your lifespan? So you want to make sure that all of this information is in writing, so that that person can step in and make decisions right away. If not, just like the power of attorney, where you need a guardian of property, you would need a guardian of person appointed by the court that could make these decisions for you. And sometimes it's a family member. If you don't have a family member, it could be someone who's not even familiar with you at all. So it's very important to put these wishes in writing, so that you are making these decisions while you can, and it's followed through. So as I think Deborah said earlier, most important is to take action now, just like her checklist where you need to write down your passwords to your bank accounts. You need that inventory of your assets and your debts. Don't leave it for someone to step in and figure out when there's a crisis going on. Make it easy for your family or friends that would be stepping in to help you, so that they know where to look. Is there something in a safe deposit box? Is it in a safe in the house? Make a list so people know what to look for and what your objectives are with that money or those assets or that debt or anything like that. Make it known. And then if you need any additional information, that is our website address there. And this here is some fact versus fiction about the Medicaid program. These are just some examples of things that I've come across in the last 20 plus years. People come in and meet with us and they're frantic. And, will my spouse have to give up the house? Do we have to get rid of it all? Where are they going to live? That is definitely not true. The spouse that that's living in the home can continue to live there. The state's not going to come take the home or ask for the keys or anything like that. The other misnomer that I get is that the spouse has to sign over half of the assets. And when you go back to the snapshot date and we're trying to figure out how much the spouse can keep, which is 1/2 of the assets, our job in the elder law arena is to make sure that the half of those assets for your spouse isn't all lost, and how can we shelter them so they do not have to give up everything or half of that. The other misnomer we have is that long-term care is the same as assisted living. And I think that Deborah pointed that out previously. Your long-term care is a nursing home. It's someone who needs pretty much 24/7 assistance with their activities of daily living. They're not up able to kind of get to the bathroom or do certain things. So it's pretty much the last resort because they're not able to do anything for themselves at this point in time. So I also mentioned that there is a 5-year look back. So that's definitely true here. And I want to just point out that when people say that we cannot protect any of our assets and we have to pay until it's all gone, which I do hear a lot, just know that that's not true. That's what we're here for. We want to make sure that whatever your parents or your family member worked hard, that we have a way to shelter some of that money, because Medicaid doesn't cover everything. It only covers a small amount of things, but if you need clothing, you need eyeglasses and dentures and hearing aids and personal transportation to get home at the holidays. We want to make sure that there's that pot of money set aside so that your loved one is still cared for. One of the other important questions I get asked is, well, we can't pick the nursing home. It has to be, quote unquote, a state-funded nursing home. Just know that the majority of the nursing homes here in Maryland do accept Medicaid. You'll be surprised at which nursing homes actually do. And the Medicaid program does not decide that for you. So as long as the nursing home accepts and participates in the Medicaid program, you can actually apply to be admitted there in the facility. And the last piece is, a lot of people say that my family's already in the nursing home. And we've depleted all of our money, and we got to do this after. Even if you're in the nursing home and there's assets that have come about, you can still meet with a Medicaid specialist. It's definitely wise to do it beforehand. So, the best thing to remember is the earlier you plan, and the more you're prepared, the more peace of mind you will have at the end of the day. And this is my contact information. So my telephone number, email address, and also our website address as well.
Okay, thank you, Sherry. So
Thank you.
once again, my name is Deborah Bakalich, and I have a company called Senior Care Lifestyles, and you can reach us through our website, which is seniorcarelifestyles.com, or call us at 410-977-3718. Thank you. And Debbie, thank you for having us today.
Yes, Deborah and Sherry, thank you so much for providing such in-depth, detailed information in really straightforward, easy to understand ways. I really appreciate that. And I know everyone who sees this will appreciate it as well. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.